In tests such as IELTS or TOEFL, you will need to know how to describe graphs and charts. And when writing certain types of essays, you may also need to describe graphs and charts. In this video, we will talk about how to describe the information in these graphs and charts. Welcome to Writing better sentences, paragraphs, and essays. There are several types of graphs and charts that can be used to show information. The line graph is often used to show the movement of information. There are also bar charts, or sometimes these are called bar graphs, pie charts, and tables. Each of these types of graphs and charts show information in a different way and will need to be described slightly differently. Let's look at a few strategies for describing charts. One way to describe charts is to group the information. There's often one group at the top, one in the middle, and one at the bottom. These are things that you can explain or describe in your essay. It is often a good idea to look at the top numbers or the bottom numbers, and can you see an average? Are there any exceptions? These are some things you may want to mention in your description of the chart or graph. Here are a few vocabulary words that can be used to describe the changes in information. If you need more help with more vocabulary, be sure to check out my other video about vocabulary for describing graphs and charts. For tests such as IELTS or TOEFL, here's a pattern that you could use in writing your description. Write an introduction, and then you could write about the largest or the biggest numbers, followed by the smallest numbers. You can compare two specific numbers in the graph or chart, and then compare two more. You should also have a conclusion sentence. Here's one more thing that you can use, especially for comparing information in a chart. Comparing the figure for 1997 and 1998, we can see a difference of. We can also use the phrase compared to when we want to compare similar information. Compared to the figure in 2001, the figure for 2003 shows, or you could use the phrase compared with. In this case, we can show both differences and similarities in the information. Compared with the figure for 2010, the figure for 2015 shows. Let's look a little bit more closely at the line graph. This is a simple line graph showing one line for information about sales of running shoes. You will want to describe the changes in the graph. Here's a possible sentence that could be used to describe this graph. The graph shows the sales of running shoes from April through July. Sales were quite low in April at only around 20,000, but by May they had risen to 25,000. For May through July, there was a steady gain, reaching 100,000 sales by the end of July. You can see that we've written one sentence that introduces the information that is shown in the chart. We've also used vocabulary such as had risen or steady gain. These are the type of vocabulary words that you will use to describe the graphs. Here's an example of a line graph with two different lines of information. This one compares the sales of tickets for soccer and tennis in 2018. Again, you want to describe the differences in the two graphs. Here's a sample description. The graph shows the sales of soccer and tennis tickets. It can be seen that soccer ticket sales in 2018 grew steadily from approximately 20,000, but finished the year at almost 100,000 tickets sold. In contrast, tennis ticket sales fluctuated throughout the year, dipping down to under 50,000, but peaking at a nearly 70,000 before dropping again at the end of the year to around 60,000 sales. You can see vocabulary words such as grew steadily, approximately, fluctuated, dipping, peaking, dropping. Here's one more example of a line graph. The graph shows the sales of software sales in 2018. Software sales rose slightly from 15 million before rising sharply to a peak of 40 million. Over the next period, they declined gradually, reaching a low point of 10 million sales. There was a sudden increase where sales almost doubled, followed by a drop, after which they remained steady for a short while. Now let's look at a bar chart, or sometimes called a bar graph. Bar charts are used to show comparison and use raw data. They are similar to a line graph, but use bars instead of lines. Here is a sample description of this bar chart. The bar graph shows the number of tourists traveling abroad from 1985 to 1990. It is clear that the number of tourists traveling abroad has steadily increased during these years. In 1985, there were under 2 million people traveling overseas. However, from 1987 onward, the numbers have continued to climb with over 4 million travelers by 1990, more than doubling the numbers from 1985, although there was a slight dip in 1989. I think you can see that we are comparing numbers, and we have also talked about a trend that is shown in the bar chart, as well as an exception. Bar charts are used to show comparison and use raw data, but pie charts are used to show how the parts relate to the whole at a given point in time. Pie charts are used to show ratios and percentages of a whole. So we will use percentage and proportion to describe the information in the chart. There are certain vocabulary words that can be used in pie charts. You will use percent or percentage. For example, 20%. We can also use the noun form percentage. However, we need to be careful to use this word correctly. The percentage of students studying for IELTS is the correct way. We do not say the percent of students studying for IELTS. Let's take a look at these two pie charts, one from 2020 and one from 2024. In a test question, you may be asked to do something like this. The two graphs show the main sources where people find the news. Compare the changes from 2020 to 2024. As with all of the charts and graphs in this video, this is a fictional chart. The information is not accurate and it's only used as an example. Here is a possible answer. The two graphs show the main sources where people find the news. Most people watched the news on TV in both 2020 and 2024. However, people who sourced their news on Facebook grew from 15% in 2020 to 22% in 2024. More people obtained their news from TikTok in 2024, while use of cable news dropped from 17% in 2020 to 7% in 2024. The biggest change was TV, dropping 10% from 2020 to 2024. It appears that more people are using social media to gain their news in 2024. I think you can see that we have compared numbers between the 2 years, and we have also talked about a trend. The last type of chart is what we call a table. A table has categories and number information in rows and columns. Again, this is a fictional chart. It's just used as an example. In an IELTS type test, you will want to give as much information as possible from the chart. You will want to write a short introduction describing what the chart shows. Also look for an overall trend. In this table, the food, drinks, tobacco category has the highest percentages, and leisure education has the lowest. Now you will want to write 2 main body paragraphs. Select something to say about each country. Look for the highest number of figures in each category. Turkey has the highest figure for food, drinks, tobacco, and for leisure education. On the other hand, Italy has the highest for clothing and footwear. You will want to write a paragraph about Turkey and Italy. For your second paragraph, you will need to write something about Ireland and Spain. You could point out that Ireland has a high figure for the first category, whereas Spain has the lowest figure for education and leisure. You may not need to write a conclusion if you have given an overall picture of the table. So the first thing you want to do is to write a short introduction describing what the chart shows. The chart shows the expenditures of foreign countries in 3 different categories. Following the pattern mentioned before, you should then look for an overall trend. All 4 countries spend the most money on food, drinks, and tobacco, and the least on leisure and education. Look for the highest number of figures in each category. Turkey has the highest figures in food, drinks, tobacco, as well as in leisure and education. Italy has the largest figure in the clothing, footwear category. You still need to write something about Ireland and Spain. Ireland spends 28% for food, drinks, tobacco, whereas Spain only spends 1% on leisure education. Your final answer would look something like this. The chart shows the expenditures of 4 countries in 3 categories. All 4 countries spend the most money on food, drinks, and tobacco, and the least on leisure and education. Turkey has the highest figures in food, drink, and tobacco, as well as in leisure and education. On the other hand, Italy has the largest figure in the clothing, footwear category, and Ireland spends 28% for food, drinks, tobacco, whereas Spain only spends 1% on leisure education. You can see that we have talked about each of the categories, and we've also talked about each of the countries. I hope you found this video helpful in learning how to describe different types of graphs and charts. Knowing how to describe these will help you in your academic writing. If you need help writing essays, you can watch more of my videos, or you might want to check out the printable workbooks that I have available. The link is in the description below. Happy writing!